Hello everybody and welcome to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Absolute Martian Manhunter by Dennis Camp and Javier Rodriguez. The alien atlas John Jones arrives in the Absolute Universe this week by way of Ultimates writer Dennis Camp, who kicks things off with a bang, quite literally, as FBI agent John Jones is caught in an explosion in a cafe, all thanks to a suicide bomber. Miraculously, he survives the incident, albeit very injured. During his injured state and recovery, he begins to wonder why people do what they do, why some become doctors while others become killers, why some fall in love while others don't. His mind is besieged by all of these thoughts as he also begins seeing visions of weird shapes, asking if he can hear it. The book has a very unique visual style thanks to Javier Rodriguez, who is equal a creator of this version of Manhunter as is Camp. The design of the Martian in this is just so weird and different than what we've ever seen before. It's very, for better lack of the word, alien. I like that it's also not just a green alien dude, but has a strange ethereal shape to him. It is green, it isn't a green alien, but it has like a shape that only vaguely represents like a human shape. Javier's colors as well are extremely vivid and almost the opposite of everything we've seen in an Absolute book up until now. Barring, I guess you would say, The Flash. The Flash would probably be the second most colorful of these Absolute books. It's really interesting because this world is meant to be chaotic and dark thanks to it being created by Darkseid. So all this vivid color is in a complete contrast to everything we know about this world and what we have seen in the Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and even the Flash books. John is shaken from his mind by his doctor, who finds he has a light concussion and should probably take some time off work if he experiences any vomiting or visions or confusion. The doctor thinks that he's lucky to be alive after such an explosion like that, but John doesn't really see it that way, since it's implied that everyone else in the explosion actually died, including several of his partners from the FBI. The doctor reminds him of his wife, who is waiting for him outside as John lights up a cigarette, told he can't smoke in there, but begins to actually see the smoke as multicolored, stemming all from the doctor. So it turns out that John may have some telepathic abilities, as later he is cleared from active duty by the doctor, and John's wife Bridget wonders how he was able to do this. Which is when John reveals that he doesn't really actually know, but he knows that the doctor's wife is having an affair, so maybe he was a bit distracted, hence why he was able to get off with just a clean bill of health. He doesn't understand why he knows this, but suddenly he does. I really like how detached John is here. He's very cold, as if nothing has ever happened to him. This is just another day on the job and he just wants to get back into the work. It's made very clear that this is also maybe him shielding himself from what happened to himself, as when Bridget mentions he almost died, he kind of has this moment where his mind kind of like stops and kind of like quiets down for a moment, like he's kind of like ingesting what has actually happened to him before the wall goes back up and, you know, he's back on the job. We also learn a little bit about John's family, something we've never had with John Jones. Of course, he's had family members like Miss Martian, who isn't really his family member as well, since she was usually a white Martian, but we've never had this. We've never had a wife, and we've never had a son before, which this John actually has. He has a son named Tyler, and it's implied here that he has some type of disability, requiring him to see a speech therapist. This is all new territory for Martian Manhunter, all new things we have never gotten in other iterations of the character, and that's because John is a separate character from Martian Manhunter this time around. Usually John Jones is the disguise that Martian Manhunter uses when he's on Earth. It's, you know, the detective disguise he has. And here, John Jones is just a normal man. He just is a guy who works for the FBI. He's not an alien. The alien entity is what comes into him, and what we've been seeing every now and then throughout the issue up until now represented as smoke or just something within the scene that John can see. It's a fantastic, refreshing change to the character, since it just opens the door to so much, because now John is an actual character. We can get to explore this character in the coming issues, and I imagine Camp will get to explore life before the Manhunter came into his life, and what was he like just as like a normal FBI agent? What's his family life like? All this really interesting stuff that we can see with this character we've never gotten before. Bridget soon reveals that since John joined the task force he's on, he's not been home much, and for once, she would like to just see her husband. As she says this, John notices something is different about his lighter, as a voice calls back a memory of a camping trip he had with his father, remembering his father's words to saddle up. Caught off guard by this, John decides that he will put in for a vacation, but doesn't expect much from the FBI. I love all of these little bits where we see Manhunter's influence over John, like the alien is the lighter, then it's the smoke, and in the next scene we see it's the receptionist's nails that she's painting on. It's a cool visual that shows that being now is in John's life. He's always there, waiting in the background, watching what John does. Later on, John is told by his bosses that he's to go on administrative leave. The man just wants to bury himself in his work again. Again, the questions about why people do what they do come creeping back into his mind as he thinks of the suicide bomber, trying to figure out why exactly he did this. He tries to convince his boss that if he takes some time off, all of his cases will turn into full-blown incidents if they aren't actively investigated. His boss asks if he is okay, and we get to see how John is viewing the world right now, which is this warped, colourful environment, signifying that John is definitely not okay. It's also at this point we learn through the narration in the book that John works for the Stochastic Terrorism Task Force, basically random crimes unit, more or less, and it's his job to kind of predict dangerous behavior, identify threats, and then stop them before they hurt the public. Despite being good at this job, John is told that he can't go anywhere near the coffee shop he was in when the bomb went off, since that's now Agent Newell's case. Newell has been in the room this entire time as John has been talking with his boss, and I figure he's going to play a type of antagonist role to John. The way the character is drawn and just kind of like sits in the scene, there's kind of like a very evil vibe to him, like he's like John's, workplace enemy almost. He has a very smug nature about him, especially when he learns that John is being taken off the case. He's also very adamant that he gets to interrogate John about what actually happened, implying that maybe all of this was actually John's fault in the end. I also just want to say that the X-Files feels very much like an influence of this book, especially because, it's talking about an FBI agent who's dealing with some sort of paranormal, extraterrestrial threat. So this Newell guy gives me, cigarette smoking man vibes. He's just standing in the corner of the room, kind of obscured by shadow. He's kind of there. He's just kind of part of like the furniture almost. And I imagine he's going to be, hot on John's trail throughout this book and trying to like trap him in something. So I think he's going to be quite an interesting foil for John to deal with. And I like the idea that the John Jones side of this character has a villain, and I imagine the Manhunter side will also have a villain as well. John, while agreeing to move on to a different case, immediately goes down to the blown up cafe to look around. It's here we get a really cool concept thrown at us, as John's job requires him to basically guess what people are going to do. Use some non-existent telepathy he has to find threats, although it never really works out. And he compares it to like a carnival mystic, where 9 times out of 10 it doesn't really work out and it's just really all guesswork. The thing John finds surprising is suddenly he's having very clear thoughts about people he knows are true. Like how Agent Newell doesn't like him and actually calls John the Martian to his wife, since he's so cold and weird and very alien in how he does things. I really love this idea of John Jones' character having a job where he has to be cold and uncaring, like an alien being detached from humanity, and that the job requires him to more or less be a telepathic, something that he very clearly isn't, yet now there's something that's very clearly making him question if that's true or not, since he's beginning to get things that people haven't told him but he just knows about them. It feels very much like I said before, an X-Files episode. It feels very much like, is this actually real and happening, or is this just John suffering from something that's very explainable, like is his brain injury causing him to see all of this? John continues investigating the crime, trying to learn more about the bomber, a man named Mike Miller, and all through the interviews he has with Mike's mother, his neighbors, his friends, he again finds himself knowing things that he shouldn't about these people. I really like the implication that these telepathic powers are kicking in because John is desperate to make the world make sense, being his job is to make something random not seem random. He has to kind of sort through it all. He's trying to figure out why Mike, a seemingly normal guy according to everyone he interviews, would suddenly just commit a bombing. John figures that something is really wrong with him, especially since he drives by his house 3 times before realizing that it's actually his. He finally gets home and ends up going to see his son, who is silently working on some clay models he makes, making people that he knows in his life, like his mother. John asks if there is a model of him, and Tyler points to one, it being a green monster-looking creature with a single red eye. Now, this doesn't say if Tyler sees John as this, like Tyler is somehow able to see the creature that is inside John's mind, but I take this as more as this is what John sees in himself. This is what John sees himself as now. He sees himself as the Martian, as what Newell was calling him. He sees himself as this kind of warped, scrambled being now thanks to what's in his mind. The next day, John decides to have himself checked out by a doctor again, lying to his wife about going to work early so he can go wait in line at the local hospital. The Martian inside John begins to get a lot more clearer in its intentions as we find out all these memories that it's having John recall are its way of communicating with John, bringing Anala back about his first firefight alongside an agent named Suttree, who assures John that they are in this together and they'll get through it. Now, this is a very cool idea, having John's own memories being used as a communication device for this Martian. Makes it seem very personal and deep, but also very, very frightening. There's this entity he doesn't know really exists yet in his head, using his own mind to convince him it's a friend. Like, that seems very sinister. Something that is evil would do this, and it's really intriguing that we're going this kind of horror route this time around, because usually when Manhunter is a very friendly character, he always puts on a very friendly facade. He does get scary sometimes, but I like that usually he's a very friendly, approachable character, and here we've gone the complete opposite direction where it's totally terrifying. This being is in your head, using your own memories to communicate with you. The doctors, despite appearing distracted, tells John that he's probably just stressed and just needs to take it easy for a little bit. John thinks this is a big relief as he gets back on the case, going to see Mike's mother again, but the woman has no idea why her son would do something so terrible, blowing up a cafe and himself. As the woman angrily says her son would never do this and it's some kind of mistake, John notices the colourful smoke again, only this time it's coming from the woman herself. John feels compelled to breathe the smoke in, and he does, and begins to get visions of a young Mike heading to school for the first day, being excited for his life, and the day Mike's mother told him that his father died. So if it wasn't already clear, the smoke we've been seeing are people's emotions and memories, and John can see and interact with them by breathing them in, just kind of like cigarette smoke he breathes in. I love this idea as well. It's just like cigarette smoke, it appears to be very caustic to John, like it kind of overwhelms him when he breathes it in. Like when you breathe in cigarette smoke, it has that very harshness to it. And we see him have that here where he breathes it in and just immediately starts like coughing and spluttering and he can't really deal with it. After experiencing this, John stumbles out of the woman's home and into the streets, finding even more people covered in the smoke and fire, soon learning that he can't escape it and it just is everywhere and overwhelms him. As he's overcome by the smoke, the strange green being appears again and tells him just to breathe it all in and take it all in. This is where the book gets really bonkers as Javier's artwork kind of takes everything over. It's kind of been shepherding the story throughout the book until now, but this is where it kind of like just takes the reins for itself. It twists panels into melting green and blue and red and yellow masses, warping John himself as he rushes through the city, trying to make sense of everything and just find a safe space for himself where he can kind of calm himself, kind of get his head back into a right form. Eventually, the green voice asks him to remember the bomber and what waited in the smoke for him, which was the Martian Manhunter. The being again uses John's memories to call himself a healer, and now it has become John. The book does something really extremely cool here with the final 2 pages that really only works in the physical form, and I'm gonna have to do some, fancy editing to make it look like how it's meant to look like in my physical copy. But what's really cool here is that John suddenly comes face to face with the Martian Manhunter, and you can make him do this in the comic by holding the page up to light, which then shows the page that it's printed on the opposite side kind of bleeds through, revealing Martian Manhunter is inside John. And he, funnily enough, calls himself the Martian Mindfucker, because obviously that's what has been happening with John. His mind is being fucked with. I thoroughly enjoy when comics do physical gimmicks like this, an acetone cover, see-through pages, that sort of stuff. It's great incentive to buy a physical copy, which I suggest everyone does for this issue if you want to experience this, because it's a damn cool effect. Aside from the cool gimmick, the Mindhunter reveals himself like this is very interesting, as I take it as him feeding into John's delusions that he's seeing, kind of messing with him a little bit here by calling himself the Martian Mindfucker. And it's a reveal that, you could see as being, evil or threatening, he's fucking with John's mind, but I don't take it like that. I kind of take it as the creature having a little bit of fun, and I really hope this ends up being kind of like the basis of their dynamic, where it's kind of buddy cop in a way, in that John is the uptight one while Mindhunter is the more jokey, laid-back guy, the Martin Riggs and the Roger Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon type deal, except all in the body of one man. Absolute Martian Manhunter issue 1 is the weirdest Absolute book so far, and every part of it I love because of it. It has completely reinvented Martian Manhunter and John Jones, separating them out into two distinct characters, adding in some really awesome new additions like a family for Jones and a brand new take on the Martian's telepathic powers and how they work. This is exactly what the Absolute Universe should be. It should be these weird, really out of left field takes on these characters. It should be different from what we know of these characters, and most importantly, it should add on to these characters and what they mean. All things that Camp and Rodriguez's book does here to the nth degree. I can't wait to see more about this book. It's just so damn cool, so interesting. I have no idea where the story is going to go from here, like what the story with the bomber is. There's this great mystery that Camp is building up with that. And yeah, I just cannot wait for the next issue. And I suggest everyone go and pick up a physical copy if you want to see that really cool gimmick in the final 2 pages. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.